One of the great things about an index universal life policy is that it is very flexible and very customizable, right? So it can be used for different use cases in terms of what you're saving for. It can be used for different budgets, whether it's a few $1,000s a year or 100K plus a year. It can be customized to do whatever it is that you want to do. Now, what that means is that because this is a fully customizable policy, every single bit of putting that policy together is going to be in the hands of whoever is designing this policy for you. So you can think of an IUL as a plain piece of land where you're going to build a house, right? So to build this house, you need a plan. You're going to have to dig up the foundation. You're going to have to pour the foundation, build the walls, everything that's needed to build a house from scratch. I have a rental property, right? I know my people that I call for electricity. I know my person that I call for plumbing. I'm not going to call my plumber and ask him to come do electric stuff. Even though he probably knows how to do it, if I have an electrical issue, I'm going to call the person who I know all day, every day is what they do is electrical stuff, so they can fix my problem quickly and easily and get it into place. Just like if I was building a house from scratch, I'm not going to call my contractor who does renovations of houses that are already done. I'm going to find the person that's the best person in town that specifically does new builds. And what happens, unfortunately, is sometimes you are working with someone that is a life insurance agent, or maybe even someone that does IULs a little bit, but they don't understand their product fully. And with an IUL, if it's not built out correctly initially, it may look good on paper, but in the long term, you're going to lose money in it. And for people that are over 40 specifically, there's one major misunderstanding that a lot of agents that are not really familiar with the product make, not necessarily because they're bad people, but they just don't understand the mechanics properly to design something that's going to work long term. I'm going to walk you through what that is. So when you are sitting with an agent or a broker and you're designing your policy, you can take a look at it to make sure that it is designed in a way that fits what you are trying to do and that's not going to lose you money down the line. If this is the first time that we are meeting, my name is Nobu. I help working professionals 40 plus save smarter and pay less taxes by leveraging cash value life insurance. If you want to work with me, the link is in the description. Now, before I get into the details of the mistake, let's just first be on the same page on how these type of policies work, right? So first, whenever you're putting money into the policy, part of your funds are going towards paying for the insurance, and then part of your funds are going into your personal bank. Second thing to understand, so you're better understand the mistake when we get to it, is that every single year, the cost of insurance is going to change. And it's going to change based on two things. It's going to change based on your age. It's also going to change based on the risk that the insurance carrier is taking. I'm going to circle back to the risk. Let's stick to the age a little bit more. Third thing to understand is as you get older, insurance gets more expensive, right? Just across the board, regardless of what kind of insurance you're getting, a $500,000 policy for a 20-year-old is going to be exponentially cheaper than a $500,000 policy for a 70-year-old. Reason being, when you pass away, the life insurance has to pay out, right? So the older you are, the closer you are to your date of death. So it's a bigger risk for the insurance company. And so you're going to pay more for the bigger risk that they're taking. Now let's circle back to the risk that I mentioned. In an indexed universal life policy, right, there is the initial death benefit, which is what the insurance company is going to pay out when you pass away. And then there's also your cash in your personal bank. So the way that the insurance company decides what their risk amount is, they're going to subtract how much they would pay out if you pass away and how much is in your cash bucket. And that's going to determine what the risk amount is on your particular policy. So those are the things for you to understand as we talk to this design issue that could potentially cost you a ton of money if you are older, as in if you're 40 plus. Now, I'm not saying that you're old, but just with these type of policies, the longer you have the policy, the better. And so if you're 40 and you plan on pulling funds out of there when you're 60, right, we don't have a ton of time to make that happen. And so we got to make sure that this policy is structured as well as possible initially in order for you to actually have your money work well for you. So when we're building out this policy, just like when you're building a house, right? Just like when you're building a house, there's all kinds of options that we can have to make this the house of our dreams, or like the policy of our dreams, right? But there's one major option that's gonna have to be picked as a baseline. I think of it as one option is just building a house where there is no basement, like having a foundation with just a slab. And then option number two is building out a basement first. Both of those things are fine. Having a new building with a basement is okay. Having a new building without a basement is okay as well. But whether or not it makes sense depends on where we're living, how big the house is, like is it a flood zone, what kind of land are we building on, right? There's all kinds of things that are going to affect whether or not that makes sense. In the terms of an IUL, Your two options are, option number one is build it out where if someone passes away, they get both the cash in the policy and the death benefit. So if your death benefit is 500,000, if you pass away on year 2 and you put in 100 grand, then the insurance policy is going to pay out $600,000, right? So that's option number one. A lot of agents that aren't very experienced will just say across the board, this is like the best thing to do and like the best way to design this, because obviously it makes sense for you to have the cash and, the death benefit, which I agree makes sense if you do not understand how these types of policies work. Remember what I said, that every single year your cost of insurance is going to change, and what's going to determine that is how old you are and also what the insurance company is going to pay out based on the option that you chose. So if every single year we're putting money in, that means that every single year how much the insurance company has to pay is going up as well, right? I'm going to just keep the numbers nice and round for the sake of simplicity. So let's say you start at 500K, you put in 300,000, and then by 65 you have 800,000 in there. This is not a realistic example. This is just me throwing numbers out there. So what's going to happen is that at age 65, because you chose the option where everything you put in is actually being added to your the payout, that means it's 800,000 that the insurance carrier would be expected to pay out when you pass away. So what's going to happen now is the age where insurance starts to get really expensive is 60 plus, right? So age 65, you're paying for 500K worth of life insurance. Remember what I said is as you get older, your insurance gets exponentially expensive and versus expensive. But the thing is, it is up to you, the client, to turn that off. If you do not turn it off, that means every single year your cost of insurance is getting higher and more is coming out of your cash value. And if you do not know that, and if you do not turn it off, you're going to end up with no money left in your cash. And like doing a policy like this is not necessarily a bad thing. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And it also is important for you to understand that if you do it this way, it is perfectly fine. But every single year, you are not reducing the risk for the insurance company. So for the insurance company, how much is coming out of their pocket is still 500,000 as it was on day one, and it is at age 65. So you're going to be paying for 500K worth of insurance, which as you get older is going to be a lot. So what is the alternative? Let's take the same example where on day one it's a $500,000 policy and you put in 300K, but now we pick the option where every single year how much insurance company is going to pay out is going to be the same up until how much is in your cash bucket starts to supersede your death benefit, in which case you get a higher amount, right? So in this example, you have 300K that you've put in, you're 65, but now the risk for the insurance company has gone down. So they take that 500K minus 300K. So the insurance that you're paying for is actually $200,000. And so the gap has gone down, but more importantly, that gap is small enough that as your interest continues to accrue, you actually have the ability to close that gap completely between what is in your cash and what the death benefit is. And that means that your death benefit starts to actually go up. However, you will be paying for just like a few $1,000s worth of insurance as opposed to paying for 500K worth of insurance and that never changing. This is especially important if you're over 40 and you specifically want to have cash in there for you to have income later, because if you do not prioritize closing that gap so you are paying for less insurance when you're older, you're going to have a policy that is extremely expensive and a policy that eats at itself. Now, that is not a good thing. I have a checklist with a few other things that you want to be mindful of if you are over 40 and you are looking to use an IUL to grow cash in. Go ahead and comment checklist in the comments and I will get that to you. While this is the biggest misunderstanding that I see on the part of agents, where they just have a blanket way of doing everything without considering the nuances, there are a few mistakes that I see on clients, and I go over those things in this video right here. If you take the time and get super clear on what you're trying to do and why, you have a better chance of not getting into the wrong policy. I will see you there.